Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Amanda Ziadeh with WashingtonExec, and today I'm joined by a member of government and industry to discuss the importance of relationship and workforce development in the contracts and acquisition space. Our panelists today are Jai Spivey, Senior Vice President of Federal Contracts at Parsons Corporation, and Major General Alice Trevino, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Contracting in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Thank you
Thanks
for
for
having
having
us.
me. Of course. All right. So I understand that relationship development is a critical component of the acquisition and contracting field. So how have partnerships and relationships played a role in your contracting careers as you've progressed? Allie, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, thank you, Amanda, again. And Jay, it's a great to see you again. We'll start with that, right? Jay and I met a year and a half ago when we were at we were in LA at a Space Systems Center conference for both government and industry. And that just goes to show that when you work in acquisition, and specifically I work in contracting, how critical our relationships are with our industry counterparts. And a chance encounter doesn't mean that you're not going to see somebody again. And you want to make sure that those relationships stay positive, because we're always working with each other, and you need to have a constructive relationship. But it's in all walks of life. It's in our home life, it's in our personal life, and it's in our professional lives as well.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
echo that, and I will say just off the front that it has been a tremendous opportunity to be able to meet so many people who have the same interest. I attended the NCMA World Congress just back in July, and I oftentimes will laugh with my family. No one loves contracts as much as I do. So going there and really being able to talk contracts was huge for me. So people like Allie and we can talk for hours about contracts. Those relationships really are pivotal. And I am reminded of times when I've had to leverage those relationships to resolve an issue. It's never good to go and try to meet someone when you have an issue. But if you build the relationships from the beginning, you have a foundation for which you can work with. You have a collaborative effort that you can put forth. And those partnerships, they just pay dividends really in what we're all focused on, getting the mission done. So I love relationships. I'm people lead, and I love talking to people. I really love talking to them when it's an opportunity for us to really grow and get better together.
Awesome. So, G, what does relationship development look like at Parsons, and why is it so important in the organization?
Sure. Parsons is really a people-focused culture. So relationships, internal and external, really focus on those. I think it's really prudent upon any organization to make sure that they're investing in their people in that way, listening to what they say, listening to the things that are important to them. So really intentional about those. We have specific things and drivers that help us stay on task with some of those things, but really putting employees at the forefront of what we're doing. A lot of times, those are the people who make the first engagement with our customers and with other partners that we work with. And then definitely, as Allie just told you, reaching out to customers, talking with them. Hey, what can we do better? Maybe we have a great thing going on. We're doing what we need to do, but how can we get better? How can we help the mission? How can we decrease cost? How can we be more efficient? Those types of things. So Parsons is really focused and intentional around those types of activities.
So I'll just add that the word that I love, that Jay's hit on a couple times, is that intention. And we're the same way. You understand what the Air Force mission is. You understand what the Department of Defense mission is. You understand what your company's mission is. You understand what WashingtonExec's mission is. But if you're not intentional on how you want to accomplish that, if you're not deliberate, if you don't lay out a strategic plan, what you're really doing is one-offs. And you might be successful. I like to call this the difference between the chef and the recipe. And the one-offs might be the chef over and over, but I can't send a chef to 1,000 different places. In the Air Force, I can't send a chef to 90 installations. I have to have the recipe, and that recipe has to include those components of intentionality, deliberate thought, the critical thinking behind it, and then what outcomes are you trying to drive?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Ali, how does that play a role in your office in terms of internal partnerships and also externally with stakeholders and other partners that way?
So I talk about what it means to be a change agent, and that's as I see, change is all around us. It's the one thing that's constant. And when I have a organization, I'm the contracting functional leader, and I have about 8,000 mission focused business leaders that I am leading through those changes. So I talk about change agent a lot. And when you have been on the job for one day versus if you've been on the job for 30 or 40 years, if you don't know how to navigate change, you have more anxiety. You may not even enjoy coming to work. And as Jay said earlier, we love contracting. We want people to be passionate about it. So if we're leading an entire organization through change, I've tried to simplify it. And so I give out like a star, and it's, so five-sided star, and it's real simple because it's STARS, and the S is know your strategy, know what it is. The T is to take on the initiatives and objectives in that strategy. The A is about alignment. I could talk about alignment all day. But the R is to reach out to your internal and external stakeholders. The final S is to share your story. But your question specifically on stakeholders, you have to know who, and it's evolving, right? So if I'm talking to an organization and say down in a squadron and somebody is in a flight or a branch, they think their internal stakeholders are just their team. And outside of that branch or flight, everybody's external. But I try to get people to think even bigger than that. Is external could be outside of your squadron. It could be outside of your base. It could be outside of the Air Force. It could be outside of DOD. You need to, when you are at this level, you need to understand all the stakeholders. You need to understand Congress. You need to understand what's going on in academia. You need to understand your industry counterparts. You need to understand the media. And you need to know how people are all taking a role in that navigation, understanding the flight pattern. So I just think that, and just knowing that somebody could be an internal stakeholder today, but an external stakeholder tomorrow and vice versa, that really helps you, again, learn how to navigate that change and be intentional about it. I'll steal Jay's word again.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better.
Awesome. Right. So I understand that also workforce development is another critical component of the contract field, of course. But you face some unique workforce challenges in this space. So tell us a little bit about those. Jay?
Absolutely. Sure. I'm happy to start that one off. I've had several conversations. Actually, Ali, if you and I get together again, I'm sure we'll talk about this as well. But the one thing that I will say is that the workforce, I think, for every industry has changed so much over the past 5 years. The challenge I think that we were kind of bumping up against is that we have this group of seasoned professionals who've been around for a long time. Then we have this bit of a gap. Then we have this junior workforce. So how do we continue to evolve as an industry so that we have work professionals at all stages and levels of careers, right? So when you think about that, we had to be creative. So I have seen, even across all agencies within the federal government, and then even some of my counterparts in the industry, I've seen them really invest in junior workforce. And that really requires that you are, I'm using it again, intentional, that you are very intentional about how you're training them, that you're creating an environment for them to grow and to progress in their career. So I think we have had to take on that challenge again, the change in the past 5 years, coupled with the gap in workforce that we have. And now we're tacking on top of that the evolution of technology. Everybody's talking about AI. how do we as contract professionals implement the necessary resources so that we can help support our businesses as they have missions that are attached to AI? What does that mean for data protection? What does that mean for all the other things that we're talking about as it relates to cybersecurity? So not only do we have the junior workforce that we are trying to train, we have the gap that we're also trying to adjust for. And then we have the evolution of technology that we're also trying to adjust to. So it requires a continuous investment in development for really professionals at all stages of their career.
Sure. Allie, anything to add?
So what I'll add is just, first of all, Amanda, I don't like the word challenges. I'll say it. I like the word opportunities, and it's just my own biasy because I feel like when you say challenge, you automatically go to negative. But when Jay was speaking about the challenges, my mind automatically goes to the opportunities. So when you identify your gaps, you can close them.
Yes.
You don't know about them, you're ignorant, or your head is, you're just blissfully unaware. You're happy, but something's going on and you need to take a little bit more attention again, intentional, but also pay attention. So for the opportunities, especially in contracting and acquisition, if you don't have your training plan, and we are blessed because we have career field education and training plan, but it's not stagnant. We do have to evolve it, and we have to solicit feedback. And I would say when I came into the Air Force 31 years ago, I got first as an officer, I did not get handed a CFETP. I did not have a career field education training plan, and we created those for officers because the enlisted, they had one, and we used them as a baseline. Again, going back to the chef and the recipe, they had the recipe, so we took the recipe for them, we evolved it for our officers, and we evolved it for our civilians. And we have built on top of that. And we have, standardization, we have unit training managers in every single squadron, and we have somebody who's responsible for that. But you have to be passionate about training others, and not everybody can teach. And so you have to identify the folks that want to be a part of that. We created this year an enterprise training consortium. It's been stood up for about a year, and we bring in all of those training personnel who have a talent for training, who love training others. It's not the ones that you tap on the shoulder and say, hey, you're going to be a trainer to this person and go figure it out. They come to us, so it's like volunteering to be able to do that. They know that they will be in service to help other change agents kind of evolve all of those changes that Jay talked about. And in digital acquisition, because we didn't want to call it artificial intelligence, we wanted to make it bigger because people think automatically AI. You've probably had, somebody thinks that a bot is, which is robotic process automation, is an AI, and it's like, no, a large language model. I mean, we know just enough to be dangerous, but how do we encapsulate all that information and train everyone on the digital acquisition transformation that is upon us? And then how do we give them access to the tools that are already there that they may not know exist? Because we found, we found an opportunity where 3 or 4 units were running, doing the same thing instead of working together. So you had expense of resources, you had people fighting for the same, funds, and they weren't even sharing their outcomes of some of these ideas that they had. And so this digital acquisition transformation environment that we've set up, it pulls people in to share their ideas. It excites people about the next generation of those tools, whether or not it's AI, machine learning, or more bots, or in contracting, you actually have to work with contractors in that digital space as they're doing digital acquisition, digital planning, digital design. And so you're really navigating on both sides. You need to learn yourself, and then you need to understand the tricks of the trade and the tools and the technology that is out there so that we in the Air Force can stay on the cutting edge.
Awesome. Yeah, and kind of to expand on those opportunities and other initiatives and factors and ways in which to grow a positive workforce and to to lead that workforce development and help build that junior workforce. How do relationships and cultivating networks play a role? And Ali, specifically, I know last time we spoke, you mentioned expanding out of one's comfort zone. So that how does that come into play as well?
Okay, so the expanding out of one's comfort zone, the baseline is everybody has heard of get out of your comfort zone. But my fundamental kind of, I guess, issue or pushback on that is that if you get outside of your comfort zone, it implies that then after you go back to your comfort zone because you are comfortable there. So why would you not go back? You might just walk out and then you go back. But when you expand your comfort zone and you really go to the edge of comfort where you are uncomfortable, that is where growth happens. And when you expand your comfort zone, you aren't uncomfortable with what you were uncomfortable with yesterday. Now, and that takes, again, step by step. You can just jump in, you can plunge into the water. We have all done that, and we get cold and we realize we should have checked the temperature first. But when you expand your comfort zone and you do it over and over again, it's kind of like this commitment to lifelong learning. And so when we are talking about the junior workforce and our medium range workforce and our senior workforce, we have to look at training differently. We have to look at education differently. We have to be devoted to lifelong learning and kind of know what that means for all of us. And if we identify where we're uncomfortable with new things, you can actually seek other people that are comfortable with it because they've already expanded their comfort zone and you can learn from them. And so it's really a learning ecosystem, and that expanding the comfort zone, especially when I'm talking to a junior workforce, I share my own personal story. It's like when you have an assignment and you first go in on the first day, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is what I'm going to do, and I'm not ready for this. And I remember when I was second lieutenant, I was like, I can't even remember how to wear my uniform. I've been on leave for a while after I graduated. And it was like, what am I going to do? They're going to ask me to do something on the first day. I'm not trained. At the end of your rotation, when you go to your next assignment, you can look back in the rearview mirror or look back on what you've accomplished, and you couldn't do it again. You could not go back to day one. You have evolved, you've changed, you've grown, you've expanded your comfort zone. And so that is kind of what makes us move forward. That's the momentum that we want to get, and just bringing people through at comfort level, giving them a comfort level, but knowing that when they are uncomfortable, that they're actually growing.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Absolutely. I love that, the reference to lifelong learning, because I'm a huge proponent of that. I think, as we look at junior workforce and as we encourage them forward, I think we also have to think about lifelong learning and what that really means, right? It's really growth. It's really growth throughout your career. And I don't think anyone ever reaches the pinnacle of growth. I think it's a continuous thing, right? So it's your commitment to learning.
Let's hope
But
not,
I
right? I
yes,
hope I never reach the pinnacle. I
yes.
really, I feel like there's no end. It just keeps going.
It is definitely true. The one thing that I would challenge, though, the younger workforce, and even myself at times, right? What is growth? A lot of people attach growth to titles and to salary, right? And so I encourage them to own your growth. You own it. There are all sorts of opportunities for you to grow. It may be developing a new skill, filling the gap, as you referenced there, Allie. There's several other things. If you do that and if you own that growth, you become more focused on how to get better every day. So one of the things I tell my team, one of the things when we do our quarterly reviews is, how do we get better? We will never reach perfection. We all know that. We will never stop growing, but our charge is to get better. And if we can do that, then it creates an environment for that junior staff that they're okay saying, hey, I really don't know this. I really need help with this. as opposed to an environment that expects you to come in the door and know everything that you're supposed to know, right? I love your example, Allie. When you first get there, what are they going to ask me to do, right? You don't know. You don't know what to expect from the people you're going to be working with or the project. But if there's an environment that's created so that those gaps that you have, people are there to support you in filling them, I mean, it's a win-win situation for us all.
Awesome. So, Ali, you kicked us off by talking about mission, and I'd love to end on that sentiment as well. You're both connected by the same mission and commitment and goal to support the warfighter. So I'd love to close by discussing the importance of close collaboration between government and industry to meet these contracting needs as you work towards, that shared mission. What are your thoughts? And Jay, we'll start with you.
Sure. The one thing that always rolls in the back of my mind are near peer threats. And I think of our near peers, and I think of their government structure. I think of some of their behaviors. I think of some of the things that they've already done. So for me, what that translates into is collaboration. We have to remove all the barriers because some of our near peer threats, they don't have the same barriers that we have. Industry versus government. In some cases, those things are the same. So for us, how do we remove any barrier for us being able to collaborate so that every single technological advance can be given to the warfighter so that we can meet missions that we never thought possible at the speed that we all want, right? We talk about speed of acquisition. We talk about the technological advances, and we talk about how do we get those to the warfighter faster. But all of that is predicated on how we started this conversation. Relationships, collaboration, so that we meet the mission faster.
I love that, Jay. And so it's kind of cool because this week the Secretary Kendall he sent out a letter to the force, and what he was talking about, again, as he always talks about, is China is our pacing challenge. And
yes,
in near peer competition, we do not want a near peer, right? We don't want peers. We want to be competitively ahead. We want the strategic advantage all the time. And in that letter, what he said is strategic competition is constant. It's continuous. And so are relationships. And so when I was reading, the ability for the Department of Defense and the Department of the Air Force and Space Force, and with all of our industry counterparts, we are all working together on ensuring that we're harnessing the power of our nation for national security. And it takes continuing effort. And relationships take continuing effort. So just as Jay said earlier, she said, we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for excellence, and we're looking for, constant and continuous process improvement. If you think that relationships are transactional and you are not a person who understands that relationships means enduring, that you may have difficulties in this area. I would then challenge you to expand your comfort zone on what a relationship is and identify what a positive, constructive, good relationship is with you. We have to do that. I have to do that with my teams. I have to do that with myself. And it's just always checking yourself as a good partner in a relationship, the other party, am I being honest? Am I being transparent? Am I sharing when I have issues and not letting them fester? Am I doing my critical thinking before I come to a conclusion? Do I know where I'm biased? Did I have a poor relationship in the past? And then we agreed to work on a better relationship. And then in the back of the mind, I keep saying, well, back in 22, I remember when you tripped me when I went out the door, and I'm never forget that. It's like, no, how do we move forward? And it's constant, it's continuous, and we will fail and falter, but then we pick ourselves back up and we recommit and we move forward together. And that, to me, is what a good relationship is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for joining me. It's a very unique opportunity to have both members of government and industry on a panel, and especially to be able to talk about such a human aspect of your roles. Workforce development, relationship building, those are such critical components of what you do. And it's great to be able to talk with you about developing and building those and what they bring to the table. So thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.